The whole picking yourself up by the bootstraps, saying, I believe in that a little bit, but I also don't believe that. I think that it was, whenever it was originally said, it was probably intended to be a little bit more brash and a little bit more like, just trudge on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to just be a little bit more softer with yourself during certain seasons. And so I think true resilience is just being vulnerable and leaning into all your tools and all the things that you have in your life to help you get through hard seasons.
You're listening to the Big Ideas Podcast with Ashlee Ilg. Tune in for honest conversations as we pursue bold dreams, redefine what is possible, and empower the next generation to live big. You'll hear stories that prove over and over again that just because something wasn't a part of our plan doesn't mean it won't be used for our good. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, you dream of becoming one, or you're raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. There's no time to waste on your big ideas. So let's get started. Here's your host, Ashlee Ilg.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Big Ideas Podcast. I am Ashlee Ilg and I have a really fun special guest friend with me for today's episode. I know you guys are just going to get so much out of it. Her name is Jessica Boarman. And a little backstory on how Jessica and I met. We are actually both, we met at a writing retreat with Mary Morantz, who is still both of our writing coaches. So that's a super fun, thin thread. It's one thing to be friends with somebody who's going through life with somebody that's maybe a couple steps ahead of you and can kind of guide the way as a mentor and a guide. It's a whole nother thing to be going literally like through the wilderness, through the journey with somebody who's like right there lockstep with you. And we're on our own journeys, of course, but at the same time, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck. Help me. Oh my gosh, I'm stuck too. Help me, And so Jessica is just like such a great friend. You're such a blessing, such a great, perfect timing in my life for all the things. And so you know how much you mean to me. But Jessica is working on her first book. She is also a writer. She's a journaling expert. She's also a podcast host, which we'll get into that to make sure you guys can all follow her and listen to her. But Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashlee. It's so great to be here today. And, I was thinking about this today while I was on my walk, how we connected on Facebook because we were talking about the retreat. And you said we happened to be staying at the same hotel together.
Yep.
And you were looking for a ride. And I just so happened to be driving to the retreat. And so I had my car. And anyway, it's just amazing how we've connected that way. And now we're just friends. And like that, it's just nice to be able to bounce something off someone and be like, okay, just like the other day we were talking about, I just said, are you struggling to get some words on the page?
Yes.
Like I am. And it's just nice to know that you're not alone.
Yes, it is. And that retreat was a year ago, like this month.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's such a fun, recap. That was super cool. Yeah. Just the drives to and from Mary's house and all of that was just those little conversations that were just super meaningful. So yes. So I know, your story is amazing. Your book is going to touch so many people and it's just cool to get a little sneak peek before, it's all published, written, hardback bound, all of that. We're getting like this sneak peek of like the story of Jessica Boarman and what has brought you here and all the lessons and all the great things. And, so maybe just kind of talk us through, your story, there's a lot of loss there. There's a lot of childhood grief. And we'll get to the beautiful other side of it. But just for our listeners to give them context, you're not alone. We are not alone. Everybody experiences grief in different ways and in different seasons. So for context, if you could just walk us through some of that childhood, journey that you went through. And like I said, we'll kind of come to the other side of it as we go.
Yeah. So really my first, hard loss was when I was 25. So I lost my brother to suicide and he was 17 at the time. And, that was just such a really hard thing to go through. And I feel like there was a lot of, shame maybe that came along with that just because you felt like you were being judged. And you're also just worried about him and just replaying a lot of the things
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes there. But so that was just a really, really hard loss for me, and I think it really transformed a lot of things for me. That's how I really dove back into my journaling habit. But I think being the oldest child,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to care for my parents. I needed to be there. I needed to be the strong one. And so 10 years later, my mom gets diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was stage 1 at the time. And so we really felt like it was going to just be a pretty easy thing. She was going
Yeah.
to kick it and we were going to move on. And come to find out, it was a very aggressive form of lung cancer. And so she went through all the treatments and she passed away 7 months later.
Oh.
And then, I don't know, I'm going to say probably about 5 or 6 months later, my dad got diagnosed with colon cancer after my mom passed away.
Mm.
And then he decided not to do treatment. He had just seen what mom had gone through, and he said, I think I want to really enjoy my time with you all. And so he opted not to do treatment, and he passed away about 7, 8 months later. So I was kind of standing there after that, just going, this is not how I envisioned my life. This is not how I envisioned my family to be. And so it was me and my brother. I had a brother he's young, he's below me. The brother that passed away, he was the baby.
Okay.
And so anyway, it's just, loss after loss. But I've always tried to find hope in all the situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're both on this book writing journey together. And so I think what held me back from writing my book until now was I wanted to find a way to bring hope to people. I didn't want it to just be another sad story. I wanted it
Mm-hmm.
to be a message of hope,
Yeah.
that you go through hard things. And I feel like I'm far enough out of the woods now that I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to bring a little bit of hope to people that might be just going through it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like the world almost puts us in like two ditches. It's either like you stay in that grief and you feel all the things. And I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but it's almost like we can do these extremes, right? Where it's like you feel it all and your story is grief and you just live in that, maybe forever. And then there's a
Yeah.
whole nother ditch of you pick yourself back up and those, the bootstraps, analogy or whatever, and it doesn't ruffle your feathers and you're so strong. And so it's like you're finding this beautiful way of bringing the feeling and the deep loss and the heaviness of it, but making it so light and making it like, but what did it create in you? What beautiful piece is still coming through that?
Yeah.
I would say, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that also within my story, it was just like, I don't think I was quite ready yet. Like that's an important piece for a lot of people that are walking through those early stages of grief right now. It's like sometimes you can't always see the good that's going to come out on the other side, or good's not a right word, but sometimes whenever you're in the thick of it, it's just so hard to step out.
Yeah.
So.
So what kind of process did you go through with your brother? You were a young adult.
Yes.
You had another brother who was looking up to you. I mean, an 8-year age difference, that's a pretty big gap. And so you're almost like a second mom, maybe. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but
you're right.
yeah. So like, what did that process look like when you're helping navigate that for yourself, but then also for your other sibling?
So you say that I was like a second mom, and that really is true. Like I remember whenever he came home from the hospital, I guess I'd probably be in second grade, and my mom thought Justin was sleeping through the night. That's my brother's name is Justin, and actually I was getting up and fixing his bottle and feeding him at night.
Oh my gosh.
So
and all the moms are like, yes, that's amazing.
Yes. So anyway, I always kind of treat him like my little baby, and had a special place for him for sure. I think I just tried to be the strong one, and my younger brother and my middle brother, they were very close. So it was hard for him, I believe, but at the time he had his own things that he would, he had a new relationship that, with his girlfriend at the time. And
Mm,
so he had that kind of support. So, I think I just tried to mainly just try to be the strong one and a good example of
mm,
strength for him, for my parents, for my community, for everything. And which resulted in suppressing my feelings
mm.
for a very long time. And gosh, I mean, I'm going to say I used to, I think I started to finally suppress my feelings whenever I couldn't control the tears. And, I found myself sitting in church and the tears would just start flowing. Like for some reason, I just felt really close to him there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I would cry at work, it would just hit you all of a sudden.
Mm,
And it was like, I'm still partially a control freak, but I was more so back in the day. And, I didn't like that I couldn't control my feeling,
mm.
So, I tried to control those feelings by suppressing them. And many years later that I'm untangling those suppressed feelings and emotions that I've just pushed down. So I
Yeah.
would, to wrap it all up, I was trying to be the strong one.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned
So,
shame at the very beginning. So, did you feel like you were responsible for that or, for his choices? Or like what was the shame based around?
yeah, I think that, and I've learned this about my personality, and it's, I've taken all those personality tests and, I'm an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs and all the things, but, part of that is, I always try to be an example, and I always think that, I want to make sure that everything's tied up in a pretty bow, and so I don't know, I guess I just was afraid that people were judging and talking and saying things that weren't positive about maybe him or our
Mm,
family or just whatever. So
mm,
I think it was more about judgment,
mm.
fear of judgment,
Yeah.
just because it wasn't really talked about a lot in my life.
Mm,
And honestly, I didn't know a whole lot of people that had taken their lives, and so it was something very new to me. And so I didn't really know how to process that.
mm,
And but my mom, she went kind of the warrior path, and she decided that she was going to break down the stigma. She was going to try to talk about suicide, and she did a lot of support efforts for those that are left behind,
mm.
the effects of suicide. So,
Yeah.
I kind of had her as an example of what to do in a time of hard time, trying to
Mm.
help others that may be in that same boat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like how you said that she took the warrior's path. I think
mhm,
that's a cool way to look at that.
yeah.
I have a friend who has lost two sons to not to suicide but to drug overdoses,
Uh-huh.
and she's taken the warrior's path, and I love that. I love that terminology because she's obviously grieving because
Yeah.
they happened pretty closely to each other, and she's obviously, like I said, she's grieving, but she's not playing that victim of she's feeling all the things, but at the same time she's like, but can I help somebody else so they can maybe avoid this? It's so beautiful, but so complicated at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you just said that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that helps in your grief if you can find some kind of purpose in it, and
Mm-hmm.
it never makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
never makes sense to you. But if you can help other people, I think that somehow helps your healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think in a lot of situations, not even in just grief, but in any situation when you can take your eyes off of yourself and serve
Hmm.
other people,
Yeah.
even in, just flip the whole thing, not even in the grief category, but just, in our early days of starting a business, growing a business, when we'd get sucked into the dramas or the challenges, it was so helpful over and over
Yeah.
again, no matter what the situation was, to be like, you know what, let's just go help somebody else with their business for a minute and take our eyes off of our own challenges.
Hmm.
And even like we said at the very beginning, our conversations with each other, like, how can I pray for you? My
Yeah.
life is chaos right now, but I'm going to
Yes. Yeah.
stop thinking about that right now. And is there anything I can help you with? I mean,
Yeah.
it's so healing altogether. And I don't,
Mhm.
I'm sure that's how God wired us, because life is going to bring us trouble, but, finding joy in those things. And if the joy comes from serving others, that warrior's pathing is going to stick with me. It's just so
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned your journaling
Mhm.
briefly. And so so as you were walking through this yourself, you're figuring out how to unravel your own suppressed emotions, as you said, as you're walking through your own healing and
Yeah.
processing and all of that. Journaling, did it just show up? Did you just find yourself doing it and realizing, oh, this is really helping? Let me keep at it. I mean, kind of like how
Yeah.
all great ideas start, or was it like a strategic, like, I'm gonna do this?
Yeah. No, honestly, I've journaled my entire life that I mean, probably started in teenage years.
Okay.
But I fell away from it. It was some way that I just wrote down my feelings, and I love to write poetry and just all those kind of things.
Mm,
I don't know, whenever I was a teenager.
yeah.
And so, of course, whenever you kind of get to where you're running around and you're kind of doing your own thing and you have your own freedom, it falls to the wayside. And so I remember whenever Justin, my brother, passed, I really leaned into writing poetry again.
Mm,
And so, I wrote a few different poems about him, and then I just kind of started journaling, writing some things down, and just one thing and another. It just kind of added back up, and I was like, this is really helping me,
mm,
because if I'm going to stuff and suppress these things and not let people see it on the outside, I'm going to have to find a way to get this out.
yeah.
And so I just started writing in my journals, and there was just a lot of things whenever especially whenever I was helping my mom through this, and I think it was healthy for her, and she loved to talk about it. She loved to talk about it. She loved to
Mm,
recount every, step of the way of that day, or the week leading up to me. She just, so I was like her sounding board.
yeah.
So I was trying to be that for her. And so I was, kind of in a way holding that. So I think writing it for me was a way to get it out of me. So I think that it just was a natural thing, 'cause I'm just a natural writer,
Mm,
and she was more of a talker. So I think that's a big piece, whenever somebody's going through grief, is kind of knowing, do you like to write it down, or do you like to speak about it?
mm,
And then again, I picked it up when my brother passed away, put it back down for several years, and I picked it back up whenever mom and dad were going through their illness, and I was their primary caregivers,
yeah.
and trying to juggle a full-time job, a small child, and at the time I was taking some classes, and it was just like all these
A
things.
lot, yeah.
Yeah, so I had to have some kind of outlet, and so that's what I leaned into whenever I just needed some way to let it all out.
Yeah.
Because I think I struggled to be vulnerable with people, because I still wanted to portray that strong
Mm.
persona. I still wanted to be the strong one, and something that somebody looks to as an example of strength. But anyway, so just kind of picked it back up, and found ways to share it with other people. So
And you still journal today.
I do, I
That's
do.
why I called you the journaling expert.
Yes, I love to journal, and I love sharing it with other people too. As you mentioned, I have the journaling prompt cards, and a lot
Mhm.
of people, well, how did those come about? How did you decide to create those? And it was because people in my community they know my story, they know what I've gone through, and I'd have people message me all the time saying, as they were going through their own loss, how did you get through that? Like, how did
Mm.
you do all that? And I would always say, have you ever tried journaling? And because a lot of times they'll say, I've tried therapy, I've tried this, and it's just not working. Like, I'm not feeling better. And so I'm like, have you tried journaling? And of course, people get intimidated by it. If they've never done it before, they get really intimidated by it. And so I was just thinking to myself, I have to find a way to make it easier for people. And ironically, I have not created a grief deck.
Hmm.
But because I always said it's just so big, I just
Yeah.
don't know how I would, get it all into one deck. And I've worked on journals, like, prompted journals and about grief, but I don't know. I just never have kind of gone to the grief deck, but I do have the decks here.
Yeah, what are they? I know I have the Joy deck.
Yes,
What are all of the decks?
growth deck.
Growth deck.
And so this one is my first one, and it was the reason that I created that one was because I was asked to do a journaling workshop at one of our local conferences that we had here. And again, I kept thinking people get so intimidated by journaling. They freak out sometimes. And I was like, I have to find a way. And so that was what motivated me to create the first journal prompt deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, all the women here, they're growth minded, because it was kind of more of a inspirational businessy type of conference. So I decided to create the growth deck, which is, more about, it kind of speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's to help you challenge your own ideas and expand. And then I created the Bloom deck, which is no longer in circulation. And that one has scripture and quotes.
Okay.
And I created that for a friend's subscription box. She
Cool.
had the Bloom box. Yeah. So it was really neat. So I just created something that was for her box that she distributed out. And people kept saying, can you please do a deck for this? Can you do a deck for that? Can you do a deck for teens? And, so I was just like, okay, teens,
Yeah.
that makes, because, it cost a lot to get them produced. And so like I feel like there has to be a demand for me to actually create it and produce it. But so I write the prompts and find the quotes and the affirmations or scripture or just whatever I put in there. And then I write the prompts that go along with it, that kind of correspond with it. And Maddie, my daughter, she designs the decks and lays them out for me. And then I have them printed at a local print shop here in Owensboro, Kentucky, Greenwell Chisholm, and they've been a great partner.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I created the confidence deck. That was the next deck. And it's really geared more towards teens. I tried to write it from their perspective and write it more in, simpler terms.
Mm-hmm.
And tried to focus on things that they could relate to, friendships and self-confidence and, just all the things that teenagers have to face and go through. So I created that one. And then the Joy deck is the one that you have.
Yep.
And actually I just got those printed right before we went to Mary's.
Okay.
Yeah. So my word of the year, actually mine and Maddie's both, our word of the year was joy. So I was like, I wanted to create something that was a little bit more fun and colorful. And so
Yeah.
that was the Joy deck.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, I love that. I've wanted to gift it. I need to order more bundles of it or copies of it.
yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I don't want to give mine away. I like them.
That's what I love about the actual, because people were saying, why don't you just create like a journal, like a guided journal or something? But I'm like, I like the decks because you can pick out your own journal, if you want it lined or not lined. People like, they like to pick out their own journal. It's fun, it's personal. And then if they're not writing on the cards, so if they run through them and they decide they want to pass it along, they can pass it along. There's no personal information there. So, so anyway, that's kind of.
So I want to go back to when you said what kind of prompted the decks, or one of the pieces that prompted the decks were that people felt intimidated to start journaling. So I know for me, and so I'm just curious your thoughts on this. When I write something down, it's getting the thoughts, no matter how honest or vulnerable or scary they might be. When I write them down on paper, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a chance that somebody else might read this,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, but I also know the feeling that when I get this jumbled mess that's in my head on paper, I feel so much better. I feel so much lighter. I feel so much more at peace it's like it takes away its power. Like if it's hard thoughts, if it's like complicated, which in this head of mine, things tend to get more complicated than I think they always need to be. And so it's really helpful, therapeutic, whatever the word you want to be, for me to put words on paper. And it, like I said, it takes the power away, and it lets me just kind of read it and be like, you know what, that's not that big of a deal. Or, you know what, now that I can see it this way, let's tackle it step by step, or let's just pray over it and put it in God's hands. Something about putting it on paper, it is so helpful. But at the same time, which may be why you said other people felt like it's intimidating too, but at the same time, you put it on paper and you're like, oh my gosh, I just admitted that I thought all of those things. And so it's just raw or whatever. So hey friend, I wanted to take a quick pause to ask if you've taken the quiz yet to find out what type of dreamer are you. It's super important to discover what's working for you, but also some things that may be keeping you from really pursuing your greatest purpose. It takes just 2 minutes to find out if you're the skimboarder, the sunbather, the sandcastle builder, or the surfer babe. So jump over to dreamerquiz.com and be sure to share your results and tag me in it. Now, back to the show. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is that the feedback you were getting, or is it more just people were like, I just don't know where to start? Or maybe a
No,
combination of both. I don't know.
it's all
All of
of
that.
that. All that, yes. But, people are saying that's the biggest fear is like they're afraid somebody's going to pick up their journal and they're going to read it. And, I always say that if there's something that's really, really personal to you and you think, I don't want anybody to read this, you can rip that page out.
Right.
You can write it down and you can rip it out, and then you can rip it to shreds or burn it or whatever you want to do. But it does help you to write that
It really
down.
does. Yeah.
I think about the prompts. People will tell me all the time that they'll start with the prompt that's on one of the cards. And then they're like, I get to the end of the page and I'm like, where did this come from? Like
Mm,
this isn't even related to this up here. And I'm like, you're sweeping out those emotional dust bunnies that are just stuck in the corner of your brain. It's like you have all these thoughts that are swirling up there and they don't know how to get out. And so that prompt, just all it does is just get that pen going on the page, and then you just let it keep going, you let it keep going, and then you just see where you end up.
yeah. Such a good exercise.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
whether you're dealing with grief or not, it's just, yeah, I love that. Makes me want to just pause this podcast and go journal and then come back and
I
finish because
know.
it's such a
Yeah,
good like
it is.
release. Yeah.
It is.
It's like going for a good walk. You're like, ooh,
Yeah.
I needed that, you know?
It gives your brain, like, something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And, Maddie, she journals. My daughter, she journals with the decks every single day.
I love
And,
that.
yeah, so I don't always journal with the decks just because I feel like, if I'm going through a season or something, I'll pick them back up, but she has every single deck and she rotates
Mm,
through them every single day. And, so I thought, I don't care if anybody else ever buys another deck. I feel like it was worth it for her to learn that habit of journaling.
mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's amazing. So how old was she when your parents passed? Was she alive with
yes,
she knew them?
so
Okay.
she was about 2 whenever
Okay.
Justin passed away, but she was about, she was teenager, she had just started 6th grade.
Okay.
So yeah, so she was kinda in that middle school phase.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very close to them too, and so it was really hard to watch her go through that. I think with mom, I always say that was a parenting mistake, a parenting fail, but, she and I have talked about it, and she's like, "Mom, it's okay," but, I think that we had never gone through cancer and illness like that, before, and mom and Maddie were so, so close.
Mm,
And so I never really let on how sick mom was to her. And, she literally found out that mom was really, really sick and probably was not going to make it about a week before mom passed.
okay.
So it was a real shock for her. And she
Mm,
didn't really have a lot of time to process that. And I'll just never forget her at the funeral. She just boohooed. I mean, she just boohooed. It was so hard to watch, because she didn't have the right preparation for that. And, also with dad, I think, we were very upfront with her. And I feel like she processed that a little bit better,
mm,
but, you live and you learn, and you talk about it with who you feel like you've failed, and move on, and she's okay. But
yeah.
but I wish that I had prepared her a little bit more for that.
Mm.
But
But you didn't know how to prepare yourself either. So
yeah, that's
yeah.
true. That's true. You look back and you're like, well, I think I was still trying to grasp the idea of it myself. And,
Mm,
but
yeah. And you were
yeah,
back in the role of caring for somebody else and
mhm,
caring for
yeah,
yourself at the same time. So,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but,
Well, Maddie's a little angel. I loved
oh,
I loved meeting her last
thank you.
February.
Yeah, I know. yes, she loved that. She loved meeting everybody, and
Yeah.
we still talk today.
I love that. All right. So, in a lot of your writing and speaking, you talk a lot about perfectionism, and we haven't
Mhm.
really hit on that yet. So, do you think your young adult experiences like shaped that? I mean, I know everything kind of shapes everything, so I don't want to black or white, yes or no, but
Yeah.
maybe, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with control, but perfection I think is a different animal.
Mm.
So, how did those experiences shape your need for perfection or your desire for perfection? I think I can definitely relate as a recovering perfectionist,
Mhm.
maybe lifelong recoverer,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, how would you say that those experiences, shaped that need for control or perfectionism?
I think so something that Mary Morantz and I have in common is we grew up in a single wide trailer.
Mm,
So, I lived in a single wide trailer till I was 16. And I feel like that in a way shaped me a little bit because, I think back and especially as I'm writing my book, I'm kind of processing a lot of this too. But, I just feel like maybe that had always kind of held me back. And so I felt like maybe I didn't feel worthy of whatever the presence of other people or the friendships or I just never felt worthy. And so I felt like if I could make everything perfect around me, then I could be a little bit more worthy to be there. Like
mm,
I could add value.
mm,
I think about that. It kind of really, it started with sports. I always tried to be the best that I could be in sports. Always trying to be the best friend, be the best daughter, be the best. And so in order to try to be the best, you have to be perfect. And I think about like my early in my career and probably up until, I don't know, probably whenever mom and dad passed away. Again, I think my perfectionism leaked into my work. It was like if I made a mistake, I mean, it was like devastation.
mm,
It was like I don't think there was anybody else that could beat me down. My boss, my coworker, nobody could beat me down more than was beating myself down.
yeah.
And I still feel like I still do that today. I don't like to make mistakes, but I also think that as I've grown a little bit into myself and maybe gotten a little bit older, I think people say that, when you kind of get into your 40s, you kind of start seeing the world a little bit differently.
Mm,
I think that's where I have gotten. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm human. I strive for excellence in everything that I do. I strive to make things the best that they can be, but I'm also human, and I'm going to sometimes not change the title in an email, or and send out an email that's wrong or just whatever.
mhm,
And typically whenever I make mistakes, it's because I'm distracted or I'm trying to do too many things at a time. So anyway, I think it just goes back to maybe my early childhood and just maybe not feeling worthy.
mhm.
And so
Yeah.
as I've gotten a little bit older, I've embraced that I am worthy of a lot of things that I never thought I was.
Mhm.
So
I was listening to an Ed Milet podcast the other day, and he said something that I was like, man, that's so good. It wasn't anything out of this world, but it was just this like truth bomb. And he was like, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was something to the effect of, we're all figuring this out as we go. Even the
mhm.
quote unquote experts, even the people that, we're looking up to as examples.
Yeah.
We're all messing up and just figuring it out as we go. Like we're all on this journey to do the best we can, learn
Yeah.
along the way,
Yeah.
and hopefully not, completely screw it all up. And I'm like, I don't know why that just gave me so much freedom. Like that just was so
Yeah.
liberating to me. And because I feel like, and maybe this is just the season I'm in too, but I feel like so many times we can put other people on pedestals, even put ourselves
Mhm.
on pedestals. And what I'm learning is that you'll just get let down. People were
Yeah.
not meant to be our measuring stick. We weren't
No.
meant to be our measuring
No.
stick. And yeah, so you mentioned excellence, that stark difference between excellence and perfection is like a
Mhm.
whole world,
Yeah. Yes.
and yeah, I love what you said, because yes, we still pursue excellence, we still pursue
Mhm.
to do our best. We're certainly not
Yes.
trying to just slop flop our way through life and say, well, I'm no longer a perfectionist. Look at me
Mhm.
fail over
Yeah.
and over
Yeah.
again.
Yes.
But yes, there's no more pressure to be like, oh my gosh, I let somebody down. I'm
Mhm.
the worst.
Mhm.
I no longer belong here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just crazy where the enemy can just get a foothold in there and just try to take one little thing and just pull you
Mhm.
down, and just keeping that authority of
Yeah.
I messed up. My work was not perfect.
Mhm.
I am still a daughter of the king, and I am
Yeah.
still worthy to be here and show up again,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about if I didn't release some of my perfectionistic tendencies, I wouldn't have launched the podcast. I wouldn't be taking Mary's course. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't be on your podcast today. There's just so many things that when you step back and you just kind of zoom out and you look at the big picture, it's like if I had just held on to all that perfectionism and just let it overtake me like I had my entire life, I would have missed out on so many good things.
Mm,
I wouldn't be doing the things that I believe are hopefully helping other people. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Well, I love that you included me in that little lineup. I'm
that's
really
right.
glad you let go of perfectionist too, if that meant we were going to meet.
That's probably why we gravitated to each other because we're like,
Probably.
I get you.
If she can do it, I can do it. Yeah. I love it. All right. So we've talked shame, we've talked grief, we've talked the perfectionism, and I'm missing a word. What was the other big thing we talked about? It'll come to me, but I don't want to. I feel like one of the words that, it's the name of your podcast. It's going
Mhm.
to be somewhere huge in your book,
Mhm.
is the word resilience. And I want to, maybe as a nod to Mary Morantz, because we've mentioned her a couple times already. She loves in her podcast with her Yale Law School background to give a working definition. And I just think that would be so great. I don't have like a Webster's dictionary, though, working definition of resilience. So
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
love to draw sort of a comparison between, though, like what the world might define as resilient and maybe what you've discovered true resilience is. So you want to maybe take that from there?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that the worldview of resilience is, honestly, what I used to believe resilience was suppressing your feelings and not showing emotion, not just pushing through no matter what, no matter at what cost it is to you emotionally or spiritually, physically, and I think that true resilience is being vulnerable, and it's feeling your emotions, and it's living your life the best that you can, because we only have this one life, and it's leaning into your faith. And I think it's just it's a well-rounded version of just living a good life. And the whole picking yourself up by the bootstraps, um, saying, I believe in that a little bit, but I also don't believe that. I think that it was, whenever it was originally said, it was probably intended to be a little bit more brash and a little bit more like, just trudge on, trudge on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to just be a little bit more softer with yourself during certain seasons. And so I think true resilience is just being vulnerable and leaning into all your tools and all the things that you have in your life to help you get through hard seasons.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I would even add, based on what I read of things that you write,
Mhm.
it's using those times that you were gentle and vulnerable with yourself to give
Mhm.
other people permission to do the same.
Mhm.
And it is again going back to taking your eyes off of yourself
Yeah.
and letting yourself feel all the things, and letting yourself take the time and be gentle and give yourself time and grace.
Yeah.
And in doing so, other people see you doing that, and they can exhale, and they can
Yeah.
look and say, I deserve that for myself too,
Yeah.
and it's like, you were brave first, so you showed them you can be brave too,
Mhm.
and you're going to be stronger because of it. And being stronger is not the goal,
Yeah.
but not letting that situation, even a lifetime of struggles, like just hold you down.
Mhm.
But giving yourself time to get back up when you're ready to get back up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting back up. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just don't stay down. Just, get back up. I say that a lot, that, sometimes you just survival mode. Sometimes you have to get to survival mode. I just actually recorded a podcast yesterday about how to know if you're in survival mode and how to get out
Mm,
of it.
love that.
But But, sometimes you just have to be in survival mode, and it's just like a computer. Whenever we're going through a hard season, or whenever something's not right, it's like your brain just kind of has to shut down, has to kind of downshift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes you have to get through something, but you just can't stay down.
Mm-hmm.
You got to finally find a way to get back up and
Yeah.
climb out of that black hole or whatever you're in. So whatever season you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And having people like you that are doing it and showing us how to do it well is such a gift, you know? So
thank
I know I always tell you, but I'm so excited for your book to come out because I'm like, I have a whole list of people that I'm going to get that book to, including myself.
you. Yeah,
Um,
I can't wait.
yes. All right. Well, final thoughts. We've kind of covered so many good things. This episode's going to be definitely one of my favorites. I appreciate you sharing so much heart and so much vulnerability. If you could know that there was one person listening to this right now that was like, I'm literally in the middle. I just experienced loss like
Yeah.
yesterday. I
Mm.
don't know what to do. This feels really heavy. It took everything I had in me to push play. I mean, maybe what would you speak to that person, or
Hmm.
where they're at, what they're made of, what they can hope for?
Yeah. I think that I would say to lean on your community. And I pray and I hope and pray that they have they have a community, because, I think back to our hardest times and our hardest losses, and our community rallied around us, and they lifted me up and they lifted our family up. So I would say lean into your community and try not to isolate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would speak to some friends that may be listening that have someone that has just gone through a serious
Yeah.
loss. Know that your friend is going to try to retreat, and be persistent. Keep checking in, keep stopping by, keep inviting them out. To the person that's grieving, I think just try to get yourself out there. And I know it's going to be hard, and you're not going to want to, but I think that connection and is probably one of the most healing things whenever you're grieving, and it's probably the thing that's the hardest to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
and of course, obviously, just pray and lean into, my mom, she went to the public library and she read every single book that she could find on grief.
Mm-hmm.
Some just finding that person, that community, or that book, that podcast, whatever, that just speaks to you in your time of need, that makes you feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
Try to
Yeah.
find that resource, no matter wherever it is.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And just knowing that you're going to make it,
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It is hard. And I think that first year is really, really hard. A lot of the first holidays, first birthdays, first anniversaries, that first year is really, really hard. And then I think years following, it'll hit you out of nowhere. For some, one year, actually, ironically, today is my brother Justin's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Happy birthday, Justin.
I know.
What a
Um,
fun way to honor him. I love
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Oh, I'm so
So
glad you told me that.
I know. But I think some years it'll just hit you a little bit differently, and just let it. Don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Be like, oh my gosh, it's been 5 years. Why am I still why am I so upset by this? It's okay. It happens. It's normal. So
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Well, this was so good. Like I said, I'm ready to go journal and I'm ready to feel all the things
yeah.
and share all the things. Thank you again for your vulnerability, for sharing all of your
Oh,
story.
thank
And there's so much to come. So tell everybody where we can find you. We want to follow you on social media. We want your decks. We want
Yeah.
to get on your newsletter. We want to listen to your podcast. So I will include links to everything in the show notes, but go
Yeah.
ahead and
Yeah.
tell everybody where they can find you.
So I'm on Instagram at jessica.boarman. And if you follow me right now, I have a giveaway going on.
Yes, you
So
do.
yeah. So it's jessica.boarman on Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook, Jessica Boarman. And my website is jessicaboarman.com. And I have a resiliency type quiz on there that you and I
So
work together
good.
on Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so
So
fun.
yeah, so you can find that quiz there to find your resiliency type, jessicaboarman.com/quiz. And you'll have a pop-up there where you can get onto the Monday message, where I send a Monday email. It was every week. Now I'm doing it maybe once a month, just because it got to be a lot. But it's just something that I try to speak something inspirational into you.
Mm-hmm.
My podcast is Resilient with Jessica Boarman, and that's on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, just all the places.
Yeah.
But if you have any trouble finding anything, everything's centralized on my website, so
Mm-hmm.
jessicaboarman.com. So
Perfect. I love
yeah.
it. Yeah, and your podcast is performing really well.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's
yeah, thank
awesome.
you. Thank
Yes.
you. So I'm wrapping up season 2 in a few weeks. I actually recorded a few episodes yesterday, and so
That's awesome.
hopefully one day I'll kind of start bringing on guests, but I'm still a newbie.
Yes. Well, don't wait till it's perfect, right?
Oh, I know.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for being here today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know our listeners are going to get so much out of it too. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Ashlee.
Absolutely. All
Enjoyed
right,
this.
friends. Well, have a great day. Keep keeping those big ideas coming, and we will see y'all on the next episode. Hey, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and my family if you would share this episode with at least one person who you think might benefit from this message. And of course, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also follow me at Ashlee Ilg on Instagram to keep up with our adventures and for continued encouragement as you pursue your big ideas. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.